Hi everyone, Nathaniel Gavronsky, and I'm in New York City. That's right, Brooklyn, baby. And I'm going to talk to you about one of the most interesting little neighborhoods in all of New York City, Gerritsen Beach. Now, Gerritsen Beach gets its name from Wolfert Gerritsen van Couwenhoven, who was born in Amersfoort, Netherlands in the year 1579. He was a simple farmer who was well connected. He eventually came to the New World and managed boweries. Now, boweries were like large corporate farmsteads, and he managed these, just north of what would become New York City. He would return back to Europe just to be employed by the Dutch West India Company and be brought back into New Holland, and he would actually be settled into what is now New York City, and was one of the founders of what would become New Amsterdam, Albany, and that surrounding area. And he was a big cultivator in the communities that would be later be known as Manhattan and Brooklyn. Now, he would eventually become the Schepen of New Amsterdam, which is kind of like the magistrate, the mayor, the main city council member. He was kind of the everything of everything type of guy in 1654. After his retirement from city administration, he relocated to Brooklyn. He located to a bowery that he named Amersfoort after his hometown. And that location of that land was at the Kings Highway and Flatbush area in the flatlands of Brooklyn. Now, he would die in 1662, but one of his descendants along a creek that bears the family name, Gerritsen Creek, would build a mill. This mill was instrumental in actually producing food and feeding many of the soldiers of the Continental Army that were stationed here in New York City prior to the British Armada coming into British Harbor, forcing the Battle of Brooklyn and the retreat of the Continental Army into New Jersey. This area would mostly be uninhabited throughout all of the 1800s. Only squatters and transients coming in and out of Long Island would kind of stay around in this area. It wasn't until around the early 20th century when the Whitney family of horse racing fame bought a mansion, was developing horses out here, and a company called Realty Associates in 1920 started selling lots along the points here in what is the southern part of Gerritsen Avenue in around 1920. Now, the Whitney family home was knocked down in 1939. One of their carriage houses was converted to a house and still stands to this day. The mill that Hugh Gerritsen built in 1665 was tragically lost to fire in 1931. Gerritsen Avenue goes all the way up and runs into Nostrand Avenue. It's served by buses BM4 and the B31. The community here has several little row houses and some businesses up there. On this side of me, there's a park. And right after World War II, there were buildings built here for GIs. They lived here for about 10 years before they all relocated, and those buildings were knocked down to make this a large park area for recreational use. One of the interesting things about early Gerritsen Beach history is that there really wasn't a New York City fire department in the area. Most of them were people were left to their own devices, and tragedy struck early on. And so one of the first and currently the only fully volunteer fire department in New York City, the Volleys, which are also known at one time as the Vamps, are here in Gerritsen Beach on Seba Avenue. Now, they actually fulfilled the role of firefighters, EMTs, search and rescue, and a little bit of policing. They currently have several ambulances and their own fire engine, and they purposely have a difference in their spelling in Gerritsen to having two T's and just one to differentiate between them and Ladder and Hook 321 that is stationed up on the corner of Gerritsen Avenue and Avenue U, which came in, later on after the settlement of Gerritsen to kind of service this area. Now, on October 29 of 2012, Hurricane Sandy hit this area and it was devastated. 12 feet of water in most areas. A lot of houses were flooded out. The Build It Back Better is still working on rebuilding this neighborhood. Many houses are actually now built on stilts, and which cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and many other houses have yet to be completed. The community is still bounding back from this disaster, but has held tight to their close-knit community and the connection they have with being from the beach. A couple of really interesting things about the Gerritsen family that I want to share with you. There was a young man by name of Jan Artsenzoom, and he came as an indentured servant, thanks to the von Couvenhoven family. In 1650, he came here. He would establish himself here after he finished his contract as an indentured servant. He would later become the patriarch of what became the Vanderbilt family. We're talking railroads, ferries, construction. The Vanderbilt family was one of the first of the robber barons, the first great barons of the early United States history, and one of the major players on Wall Street. If it wasn't for the Van Couvenhoven family, Jan would never have arrived here in 1650, and the Vanderbilts giving way to Carnegie and J.P. Morgan. A lot of those people were able to get their early start thanks to specifically the Vanderbilts. The big oil tycoons were reliant on the Vanderbilts to get their product around the country. So you would have the Rockefellers would be a small player if it wasn't for the railroads that the Vanderbilts built. So the Van Couvenhoven family were instrumental in developing a large part of American economy and our history. Another really interesting thing is that the descendants of this family, of the Gerritsen family, are just to name a few, the Wright brothers of flight, the actors of Michael Douglas and Humphrey Bogart were direct descendants of the Gerritsen family. In fact, presidents both Teddy and Franklin Delano Roosevelt would not be with us if it wasn't for the Gerritsen family. So this area has a lot of history to it, not only with the area itself that was kind of a transient place as the city grew, but the people that it was named after, the people who lived here, gave birth to a lot of Americana and some of the greatest presidents in U.S. history. I really think these little neighborhoods in Brooklyn are a fascinating little place. Each one of them is a different community. For those of you who don't live in urban areas, you think of little small towns, and all these little neighborhoods are their own little small town. The only difference is there's not really a lot of farmland in between them, but they are just small little towns packed among each other, where they take a bus across each one of them and go into the big city to work. But this is a beautiful area. It's got everything you want, from New York City being just, the Manhattan being about 30 minutes away by car. But you have a lot of the good life out here in South Brooklyn. And I hope that a lot of people, if you come visit New York City, will take the Q train or the B train to Kings Highway via Brooklyn, and take the B31 bus down to Gerritsen Avenue and check out some of the great sites here. There's several good restaurants here. There are several houses that are for sale in this area. It's a beautiful area. They have car shows, they have parades, baseball fields. One of the best public schools in all of New York City is just up the street. So that's the Gerritsen Beach in a nutshell. I want to thank all of you for watching. I hope you will like and subscribe to the video and keep following me for future videos on the history of New York City and beyond. Until next time, this is Nathaniel Gavronsky from Gerritsen Beach, Brooklyn. Stay healthy, stay wealthy, stay wise, and as always, stay classy, New York City.